back again with my shitty podcast. And it's a Thursday this week because it's hard to find time to do these things, to be honest with you. Also, I wasn't working on Monday, so it's kind of thrown my days out, if you get me. Right, stop rambling already before you go too far in the ramble direction. Ramble. I had planned on doing an outdoorsy walking around, see if I can find some cars podcast. But mother of Jesus, the weather is shite. Raining and incredibly high winds. Rain I can kind of deal with. If you've got a good rain jacket, you're kind of all good. But wind, my God, the wind pisses me off. Especially if you're a cyclist of any description. There's nothing worse than cycling and running, actually, against the wind. Okay, I'm already starting to ramble. So instead of going outdoors and wandering, I'm just lying in my room on my bed. A comfort podcast, comfort mode, slacking off the dampers and easing for a relaxing grand tour. Not a particularly exciting motoring week on my end. I suppose I did see a few nice little things. On my day off on Monday, I cycled out from Dublin 24, D24 for life, baby, out to Docky, Killiney area, walked around, went up Killiney Hill, etc. And there's a high end, as everything is around there, apartment building. I used to live out that way. And there's a guy out there who always had a Citroën DS. It was always parked in the car park for these apartments. But I went by there yesterday, on Monday. And where the DS is usually parked, there was now a Citroën Ami 6 brake in a kind of a bronzy colour. Again, anything I mentioned here is up on the Instagram stories. Carnosaur, CAR_NOSAUR on Instagram, but you're probably already following me anyway. It's still on French plates. I don't know if this person is French, because if my memory serves me correct, the DS was always on French plates as well. So maybe, well, I suppose because I don't know if you actually have to change the plates. I don't know. Anyway, either way, Ami 6, the Ami 6 possibly even cooler than the DS. I know it's a wild thing to say. DS is more just because and if you can be familiar with DS, they're not actually tripping over them. But you know, the Amis are it's certainly a more left field and obscure choice than a DS. If my memory serves me correct, the Ami 6 brake, that's what James May had in that episode of Top Gear when they went on the classic car rally in Spain. He had an Ami 6. Clarkson had, was it an MG midget, wasn't it? I think. And Hammond had some old British thing that he bought because I think he worked out that his grandfather worked in the coach builders that built it. Some, I don't know, old British stuff is completely lost on me. Yeah, so Ami 6, that was cool. What else to see? Oh yeah, one of the coolest things I think I saw all week was a Toyota BB. If you're unfamiliar with a Toyota BB, they were called Scion something or other in North America, and they were badges Daihatsus in some countries. Released in the early millennium, kind of the same era as, say, like the Nissan Cube, and stuff like that. Like, kind of looks like a K car, but it's not, because I think the smallest engine is a 1.3 and you get a 1.5 and bigger, obviously, in size than a K car. But that kind of look, funky little things. But the one that I saw, it was in Trinity College, was a BB open deck, which is a 2-door version, which has these kind of roof bars that go across the roof and then down onto the back, which has a tiny little kind of pickup bed in it. Completely ridiculous thing, but cool nonetheless. Again, it's up there on my Instagram if you haven't already seen it. Another thing I saw, which you don't see often and kind of flew under the radar in period. The only reason I became aware of it is because a mate of mine had one a few years ago. So it was an E82, which is the coupe version of the E87, which is the hatchback code, BMW 1 Series. But it was a 123D, which is a 2-litre diesel that they offered in the 1 Series, the first generation 1 Series. But it went up to a 25D in the next generation. But the 123D, so it's a 2-litre diesel, but it uses the same twin sequential turbo technology that was in the equivalent E60 535D. So it's kind of like a smaller version of that engine, essentially, although 4 cylinders rather than 6. But I say the same twin sequential turbo setup, which gave it, I think, 201 horsepower and 400 newton meters torque, which is those are pretty nice figures. And I'm sure if you give it a bit of, bring it to your local remapping agent, I'm sure you could pump up those figures even further. And its claim to fame at the time was it was the highest output per litre power-wise diesel engine at the time, having just a nib over 100 horsepower per litre. I drove my friend's one when he had it, which is a few years ago now. But it was great. It's while the power is great, it's the mid-range torque, which you really notice. And I like the E82, again, if I'm getting my nomenclature correct, the E82 1 Series Coupe, especially if it's in the right spec, like with the M Sporty bumpers and larger wheels. I think it's a car that's aged very well. The whole kind of, I'm not sure, actually, I don't know if did Bangle do the 1 Series? But certainly Bangalore anyway. Misunderstood BMWs in period, but yeah, I think they've aged well. Even the hatchback has aged well, I think. And of course the rear wheel drive, which is great, and you can get them on manual gearboxes, all of which BMW don't. Well, you can still get the occasional manual gearbox, but not for long. And yeah, the rear wheel drive stuff is really kind of not in a 1 Series, not anymore. It tells you. Other stuff that one thing that I did post this on my Instagram as well, which just pissed me off on Saturday. Again, it was pissing rain. We're going to have a very wet and rainy winter this year, I feel. I know we're only just kind of in winter. What the fuck am I trying to say? In autumn. But I feel like the winter's going to be, the temperature, we're getting what we're going to get in winter now. Rain, wind, but it's still not particularly cold, but then it's going to get cold as well. It's going to be miserable. It's going to be a miserable winter. But anyway, really rainy Saturday, and I had to stop and get some diesel. So there's a Maxall I was heading in towards my friend to help him move a bed. This is what happens when you have a van. People scab off you to move stuff. Move a bed from his apartment to our friend's, who's just moved into his first home, actual house. So I was driving through, and so I stopped at Templeogue Village. There's a Maxall there. Piss and rain. All the pumps were full. But then I realised the second one down, which is one of the ones I would use, because the fuel filler on the old Peugeot partner is on the left hand side, because the Frenchies don't switch stuff over for right hand drive markets, as is the sliding door. So yeah, I was going to use the second pump. I noticed there was a Tesla Model Y parked at the pump. Now there were plenty of parking spaces just for running in and out of the shop or whatever, free. This fucker had parked his electric vehicle at a petrol pump. So that was annoying. And then, just to double down on his dickish behaviour, he comes out of the Maxall with a bag of stuff, opens the passenger door, puts the bag of stuff on the passenger seat, closes it, locks it again, and then he runs across the road to the off licence. All the while, this thing is parked, again, pissing rain, parked at a pump. So I don't know if he's just been a cunt, a self-righteous prick, and I drive an electric car, and I'm just going to block a petrol pump because you're polluting the world, even though that's an argument for another day about pollution. But or he was just so oblivious to what's going on in the world, he just didn't realise, he just like, I'm going to stop here, not realising he's completely blocking up the petrol pump. Dickhead. If you want that person's registration details, I can pass them on to you. Just slide into my DMs. Obviously, that's a joke. I would never do such a thing. That's kind of all the stuff that I did in my motoring week. Motoring news. Let's start off with this somewhat serious point. I'm sure you might have seen, because it went viral on Instagram and I assume on the TikTok, which I'm not on as well. I'm sure it's on YouTube too, of this incident with a bunch of supercars in Sardinia, I think it was. Some sort of like supercar, tour. Bunch of rich people driving around their supercars in Italy. And it's from just, I think it's German. They're speaking, family are speaking in their car, filming all these supercars trying to overtake on single lane, two-way traffic. And like a bunch of supercars come along, overtake the camera car, and then they kind of get stuck on a motorhome and a few other things, and some of them move out and overtake the motorhome. And then I think it's a Hurricane Spider comes along, pulls in behind the motorhome, and then a Portofino comes along, and the Portofino tries to go and overtake both the Hurricane and the motorhome in one go. Then the Hurricane pulls out to overtake the motorhome, not realizing this person, the Portofino, is coming up to do a double overtake. So the Hurricane and the Portofino collide. It spins the Portofino off to the left, which goes over the guardrail, flips over. The Hurricane spins into the motorhome, which causes the motorhome to flip over, and then the Lambo ends up in the ditch on the right hand side. All the behaviour of the supercar drivers was so dickish. Don't get me wrong, I've no problem with people overtaking if you're in a quick car and you want to get ahead of something slow, but the way they were doing it was really obnoxious and aggressive and unnecessary. I'm not going to say point blank, but anyway, what I'm going to say is I'm sure you've seen the video. If you haven't, feel free to look it up, but warning, I got a news alert, whatever, from Google, because it knows I've watched the video, and it turns out the people in the Portofino actually died because they got trapped in the car and the car went on fire. So the guy in the Hurricane was arrested and is possibly being charged with, I think they were automotive homicide or something. I'm not going to point fingers. It's up for debate as to who exactly was at fault for causing the crash itself. But either way, the behaviour, something like that was going to happen. You could tell. It was just, it's like I said, I'm all for enthusiastic driving, and it does get frustrating when you're in something quick and you're looking for when you're going towards some good roads that you want to stretch the legs of your performance vehicle. But there are ways of doing it, and there's ways of doing it responsibly. And those that clearly just wasn't how things were being played in this instance. Terrible tragedy, and just it's a lesson to go, don't be a dick. You can have fun in your car, but not at the expense of others, not at the expense of human life. It's tragic, and at the end of the day, 2 people are dead, and I'm sure they have family and friends and loved ones that are devastated, and my heart goes out to them. And obviously the poor people in the camper van as well, they're all over. I'm not sure what their injuries are. Apparently there's no fatalities there, but someone's going along in a motorhome, they're obviously on their holidays, mind their own business, and they got involved in something tragic. And even for the person in the Lambo, look, they didn't intend to kill anybody, and now they have that on their conscience. It's tragic, but look, as I said, the behaviour, if something like that was inevitably going to happen, unfortunately. So yeah, lessons to be learned. It's one of those things, I've said this before, as much as I love Top Gear and all the great YouTubers out there, the stuff that they do on camera has given a lot of people kind of a false sense that you can be invincible and do crazy things in cars on the public highway, which technically you can't. And a lot of people don't realise you do need a skill level of some degree to drive these cars quick and on the limit. Anyway, enough of that depressing news. Just thought I felt I need to bring it up. Other stuff in the motoring world. So journos have got their hands on the Lamborghini Revuelto. I'm still not sure exactly how it's pronounced, but I think it's Revuelto. It's Revuelto, so Revuelto. Shock horror. It's great. It's a step on from the Aventador, mostly because it has a dual clutch gearbox now instead of a single clutch job that smacks you in the back every time you change gear. With the hybrid assistance, it's got over 1,000 horsepower. It's only 0.5 of a second slower from 0 to 124 miles an hour than a Chiron. The one that I read in Piston Heads, I think it was Mike Duff did it. The test was at Nardo. I'm sure I think there are road reviews coming a couple of days down the line. So they're stretching it out. And he was following Lamborghini's test driver, whose name escapes me. It's not Valentino Balboni. He's since retired. It's some new young whippersnapper. But anyway, the test driver was driving it's the guy who was driving the SVJ, which set the Nürburgring lap outright record for a production car. But anyway, he's in an SVJ, leading a pack of Revueltos. And while your man was able to use his skullduggery around the twisties, to stay ahead, Mike Duff was saying he was able to catch and had to back off along the straight to stop from overtaking the SVJ. So much is the increased power output of this new Lamborghini. And bear in mind, this is the beginning. As is the tradition with Lamborghinis and most cars, especially performance cars. You get the entry level, if that can be a term that can be used, version initially when it's first released, and then obviously there will be drip fed then crazier, more powerful versions as time goes on. It's not a particularly good looking car, I don't think. Lamborghinis have just been steadily getting worse looking. I think they went through a bit of a purple. Well, I think they've all been good, especially the early Audi ones as well, up until then. And then kind of after that, it's kind of slowly slid into the Murcielago, nice. Aventador, cool. Gallardo was great, but then like the Huracan and now this Revuelto, they're a bit too fussy, and car styling generally has kind of gone. They've kind of lost. They've run out of ideas, and anyway, all that stuff's subjective. As a driving experience, it sounds like it's pretty spectacular. And look, as I said previously, long live, which they won't be, but we have to appreciate these V12 naturally aspirated, albeit with a hybrid system, supercars while they still exist. So more power to Lamborghini with that. Rennsport was on. Was it the weekend just gone? I think it was. Rennsport being this, I suppose, festival of all things Porsche in Americas. I think it's in Monterey. Well, I know the track work all happens at Laguna Seca. I don't know if they're both beside each other. It's in America anyway. Loads of journalists were there. Smith and Sniff were there. They did their podcast from there, and fucking Instagram and all social media was filled with content from it. It's something I'd love to go to. It'd be a trek to make it, but it's on the bucket list. It's all things Porsche, from old, cheap, expensive, new, motorsport, everything you think of. Prototypes, everything, all sorts. Jerry Seinfeld was there with a 550 Spider that he had fully restored, and then he custom built a VW transporter van that the guy who originally owned one of the guys who did own it back in period and race it, who's some American guy, some American racing driver. Sterling Moss raced the car initially, and then this other American guy bought it and raced it. But your man, he built a VW transporter with an elongated wheelbase and etc. Jerry Seinfeld has done the same thing, and he brought the 550 there on this VW transporter. Anyway, off topic. It seems like a cool event. I'm sure you saw loads about it. But the one thing that Porsche did unveil was the Porsche 911 GT3 Rennsport or Rennsport or whatever. Basically, a GT3 Cup car, but without any regulation. So it's got like nearly 700 horsepower, aerodynamics out the wazoo. so just one of these track toys for very rich people who are very friendly with Porsche, to just go and have fun weekends at tracks, because that's what the rich people do. Cool thing. Again, more power to Porsche for making it a real thing. It's something most of us won't ever experience, but a cool thing nonetheless. Continuing on the supercar front, sports car supercar, journalists also got their hands on the Roma Spider. I like the Roma. It is spec dependent, mostly what colour it's painted in. The coupe, I like it. It's of all the modern Ferraris, Ferrari in a bit of between the Roma and the 296 GTB, and even that Daytona SP3 thing that they brought out. Yeah, they've been kind of, because like last few years with Ferrari, it was kind of like I love Ferrari full stop, and all the Ferraris are obviously where it's at, but yeah, they're going through an okay patch at the moment with the road cars. But the Spider, yeah, so look, it drives brilliantly. Again, these things are subjective. Styling wise, I would always have the coupe over a drop top where available. And I just think with this, I haven't seen one in real life, but with the Spider cut off, I don't know, the rear end looks kind of fussy. Like, it's a fabric folding roof, so it does tuck away quite nicely, but because it's a 2+2 with the seats and the roof mechanism, and I don't know, the rear end looks a bit weird and fussy to me personally. But hey, look, if that's what you're into, it's a cool car. And as I said, look, it drives brilliantly, as does the regular Roma. And if you need one with a routed roof, you can get one without a roof now. And then also in sports car news, Aston Martin have finally confirmed that the Valhalla supercar will be going into production next year. If you're not familiar with what that is, it was initially announced in 2019, but then of course pandemic hit and the world fell to shit. Aston went through a bit of a ropey period, and kind of went in the back burner, but it is back. It's going to be 1,000+ hybrid mid-engined supercar, ground up supercar. Because obviously the Valkyrie, which was a bit of a special edition limited run thing, was kind of a Red Bull car with Aston help, whereas this is a full on Aston Martin ground up supercar. So yeah, it looks cool, because we've seen what it's going to look like, and no doubt it'll drive pretty amazingly too. They say they're going to use a lot of their Formula 1 knowledge, so hopefully it doesn't start well and then just drop off like Aston Martin has been doing in Formula 1 this year. More in Formula 1 in a moment, I won't get bogged down by that. But speaking of Aston Martin, and to blend in, nice segue into motorsport news, Aston Martin now are going to go back into the top flight hypercar series in Le Mans with the Valkyrie. They were going to, then they decided they weren't going to, and now they are. They got a bit sniffy about when the LMDH rules got brought in, where you can kind of, as I mentioned before, it's essentially I suppose a silhouette, if you will. Well, not quite. It's basically stock chassis, and you can put in your own drivetrain. But they got snippy that it's a cheaper version essentially of getting into the top flight hypercar class. But I think they've seen that the LMH cars, which are the full on prototypes that manufacturers can make, is definitely the way to go. So they decided it's back on. So they won't be there until 2025. But we will then have Aston Martin along with Lamborghini, Ferrari, Porsche, Toyota, Glickenhaus, Cadillac, Peugeot. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but it's a big, thick grid for the hypercars. Me and my mate do watch Le Mans every year, and we went back in 2013, and we keep meaning to say we're going to go back, and we said we're definitely going to go pull next year. So we really must pull the finger out and get it booked, because we booked a lot when we went in 2013. We did it last minute, and while we enjoyed the event, our organisation wasn't exactly up to scratch. So we want to do it, and we want to do it right this time. So I must get on to him actually, because he'd been unemployed for the last few months and he's got a job. So now we really must book that. So motorsport. So obviously this weekend, Formula 1 is back after its regular 2-week break. We're getting a bit greedy with these triple headers and back-to-backs that we've had with this bloated calendar that Formula 1 has now. But Yeah, so it's in Qatar at the Lusail circuit. They first went here, there, everywhere. Went to Qatar in 2021, won by Lewis Hamilton quite convincingly. Fernando, while he was still at Alpine, got his first podium when he had his return to Formula One. It was a pretty exciting race. They weren't there last year because of the World Cup. But it was a pretty exciting race in 21. It's a real kind of high speed track. Cars seem to be able to follow each other, and some good wheel-to-wheel racing. It was quite hard on the tyres, especially the front left. I think there was 4 tyre failures in the race. But yeah, it seems like a pretty good track. Not exactly buzzing with excitement because I think there's one grandstand along the pit straight. It's a night race. And yeah, I think they maybe sold something like 30,000 tickets last year, and mostly to expats. We won't get into Qatar and its human rights abuses. This is not a political podcast. If you don't know about Qatar, look it up yourself. But yeah, so Max, I'm not even going to use the word could win the championship at this race. He will, because I think he only needs to score 3 points more than Checo to clinch it. The thing is, though, it's a sprint weekend, so it means he could and probably will win it on Saturday in the sprint race, which will be odd, because then there'll be the full race to go on Sunday. It's always kind of, and I don't want to say annoying, but it's a bitter enough pill to take that someone wins championships, with several races still to run, but then to win it on a weekend before the races even happened will be even more strange. But look, it's fully deserved. Max and Red Bull this year have been on another level. It's one of those ones where people are like, oh my god, dominance, blah blah blah. But we'll look back at this season, if not this kind of era of Max Verstappen and Red Bull, at an extreme high point in the sport. And he'll be a 3-time world champion, 3 back-to-back as well, which is rarefied ground. I think the only people to win 3 are Prost, Senna, Fangio, Schumacher, Vettel, Hamilton, obviously. But Hamilton never did 3 back-to-back, because he has 7. First was with McLaren, then the patch, then he did 15, 16. Is that right? Yeah, 15, 16. No, sorry, 14, 15. Then Rosberg won it. Then 17, 18. Oh no, so we would have done it in 17, 18, 19, 20. That's what he has done. That's too many championships, isn't it? 4, 5, 6, 7. How am I getting this so wrong? He has 7 championships, so 08, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, yeah. So 17, 18. So 17, 18, 19, 20. So he has won 3 in a row, actually, Hamilton. So 3 in a row: Hamilton, Vettel, Schumacher. I think Schumacher still holds the record for the most in a row because he won 5 in a row. 2001, 2, 3, and 4. So that's a record that Schumacher still holds. But yeah, so a 3-time world champion. There's not many who've won 3, and certainly not 3 in the trot. The only people who've won 3 in the trot are Vettel, Schumacher, Hamilton, and now Verstappen. That's showing, obviously, kind of since the Schumacher era, periods of dominance have become more common, for sure. But yeah, look, it's the second half of the season has been pretty decent, despite the fact Red Bull and Max have dominated. Going back to all the races that we've had since the return to summer break, have all actually been pretty exciting. Even when the ones that Max ran away with, Singapore obviously being the high point, where it was the one race that they weren't at the races, one for a better term. But even like all the other races behind Max, there's been lots of close wheel-to-wheel racing, and the grid is quite tightly condensed behind Red Bull. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Liam Lawson's going to be back again. Danny Rick's still not quite match fit, but he probably will be back for Austin, which I'm sure he'll be happy about, because he's a he's a bit of a closeted American. I say closeted. He's his love for America is pretty on the nose. Yeah, and then they've already Red Bull, they already sealed up the Constructors' Championship in Japan. The exciting one really still is there's only 20 points between Mercedes and Ferrari for second in the Constructors. I'd love to see Ferrari to get it, obviously second, but that's going to be a tight battle. And then the other one is Aston are down to fourth from second earlier on in the season. They've dropped down to fourth, and that's mostly because obviously they've had a drop off in the second half of the season performance wise, while everyone else is kind of taking a step forward. But you can't help but put a lot of the blame on the fact that 90% of the points have been scored by Fernando Alonso. I don't understand how much further the nepotism with keeping Lance Stroll in the team, can go on for. Obviously, Fernando's on a different level. He's one of the all-time greats, but that's too much of a gap. And it's going to cost Aston. It's an improvement on the previous season and previous seasons that they've had. They were seventh last year. Fourth is good, but it could be fifth at this rate because McLaren are catching them at leaps and bounds. I personally think McLaren will probably deserve to get fourth, the way their second half of their season has gone. But it'd be a big shame for Aston Martin to drop after such a great start to the season, and it'd be disappointing for poor Fernando because he really put the work in. But yeah, there is still some excitement to come. The battle for seventh as well between Williams, Alfa, Alpine, and Haas. Alpine are kind of a firm sixth, but then Alfa, Williams, Haas, vying for that seventh position. Williams deserve it for sure. They've taken the biggest leap and they are currently sitting there. But because the points are so single digit and hard fought for at that end of the grid, anything could happen. But yeah, so there is plenty still to look forward to the rest of the season. Some great racetracks coming up. Austin is great. Mexico is great. Brazil is great. We have the Vegas race, which will be interesting. Want for a better word, actually be it'll be the last early morning race because the race this weekend is 6 p.m. as is the sprint. I'm not sure if I'll manage to see real. I'm not sure. I think qualifying's on at 6 tomorrow evening as well. Qualifying happens tomorrow evening for the race on Sunday, and then Saturday is all about the sprint. You get the sprint qualifying and then the sprint race all on the Saturday. I think the Vegas race is the last one that's a pure early morning because it's 9 p.m. local time. So I think we were going to have it at 6 a.m. over here, which is odd because North American races are usually good timing for us. Anyway, but then there's a lot of those. Yeah, Qatar's a nice evening race. Mexico's a nice evening race. Austin's a nice evening race. Brazil's a nice evening race. And then I think it's Abu Dhabi, which I think is afternoon, but that's the very last race of the season. And some of the stuff will go down to the wire, I'd say, but whatever. Abu Dhabi, Middle East, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah, that's Formula 1. The WRC was on the weekend. WRC Chile, won by Kalle Rovanperä. It was an exciting event. He last time. No, sorry, Oitanek won it. Apologies. Kalle Rovanperä is in the lead in the championship, but Oitanek won the rally. One of his first wins since I think they said since Rally Sweden was the last one he won. Because he's with the Ford M Sport, which the Ford has kind of been trounced by the Toyota mainly and the Hyundai this season. So Oitanek won it, but Kalle Rovanperä finished third. Because what's that guy's name? Polish driver. I should write this shit down. The guy was in second for Toyota. Crashed out. There was a lot of rolls and crashes. But anyway, yeah, Oitanek won it. And that means Rovanperä, I think, is 30 points ahead of Elfyn Evans in the championship. But I think there's 3 rounds still to go. I haven't kept my finger on the pulse as much as I should have with the WRC again. I dropped off as I did with all the other forms of motorsport I tried to keep track of. But I have I have been following it as well as I can. But yeah, so Oitonic won it, and after that, it was announced he's going to be going back to Hyundai, which would be good because he is a champion, and he's a great rally driver, so he deserves to get good equipment. But speaking of people moving teams, MotoGP was announced just yesterday that Marc Marquez is going to be leaving Honda after, I think it's 11 years he's been with them, won all his titles with them. The bike hasn't been particularly competitive recently. He's been a bit erratic, so through mutual agreement they decided to part ways. It's one of those big things. It's like, it'd be like Max leaving Red Bull, or like, Lewis leaving Mercedes now. So pretty big news in the world of MotoGP. Hasn't been announced where he's going to go yet, but the rumor is he's going to go to Ducati. Be interesting because Ducati has been quite competitive of late. So it could be a resurgence from Marc Marquez. So yeah, that's pretty big news in the world of MotoGP. I think that's what I have to say in the motorsport world. What do I have written down there? Oh yeah, so my classified, I have two classified finds of the week this week. First one is it's a first generation Merc CLS. It's a CLS 500, so it's the V8, not the AMG. So it's the regular V8, if you want for a better word, V8 compressor. So it's a supercharged V8, 300 horsepower, mint condition. It's got a Kildare reg on it, and so it's I think it's 07 KE 500, which is nice. I'm not big into personalised regs, but yeah, why not? Great looking car, the CLS, and $6,500, and it's had like loads of work done to the suspension. It looks immaculate. The ad is very honest. It's got full service history, 147,000 kilometers, I think it says, isn't it? Which is leggy, but a cool car. It'll be expensive to tax. I think it says it has some tax on it, but it doesn't say how much. It's got a year's NCT, by the way, and £1,000 spent on suspension recently. $6,500, £1,800 a year to tax it. But look, if you want to experience a nice wafty V8 in a beautiful body shell with all that luxury and comfort of a big wafty Mercedes, I think that'd be a nice thing for not a whole lot of money. It's a whole lot of car. But then the other one, which you may have seen, because Auto Obscura, as I'm sure you all know on Instagram, he posted this on his Insta. It's a Yugo Corral, which is a tiny little Yugo hatchback, kind of based on the Lancia Y and the Fiat 127, I think it is. Funky little, behind the Iron Curtain Soviet hatchback, but it's in absolutely mint condition. Left-hand drive now, of course, but the person selling it, it's got a fresh NCT, comes with a bunch of spares. It's in great nick from the looks of the pictures, well looked after car, and only wants 2,850 for it, which I think is, people would scoff at that, spending anything above a crisp packet to buy an old Soviet vehicle, if it's back 10, 20 years ago. But obviously they've come kind of full circle and have an ironic cool to them. Cool thing. Which is, again, it's one of those ones I probably shouldn't tell anyone about and just buy myself. But anyway, there you go. Look it up. It's the only Yugo Corral on Done Deal. You'll find it pretty quickly. Don't have a YouTube channel to recommend this week, but I did watch the movie Logan Lucky, which is a Steven Soderbergh movie. He of Ocean's 11 and many other great films. It's got Daniel Craig, Channing Tatum, Adam Driver, amongst others. It's a heist movie involving NASCAR. It's unpretentious, just a bit of fun. It's a comedy heist film. Very enjoyable. It's up on Netflix, worth a watch. And then my music, I'm going to go for a full album this time. It's a good view. It's probably about 10 years old now at this point. But again, one of those albums that kind of flew under the radar. It's an album that was made by the infamous record producer Danger Mouse, with Daniel Lupi, a composer, and it's kind of it's a soundtrack to a non-existent spaghetti western. It's called Rome. Loads of guest stars on it, including like Jack White and Norah Jones. It's just a great album, so look it up. Danger Mouse, Daniel Lupi, Rome. If you have to pick one track, 2 Against 1. It's one of the Jack White tracks. Great track. Yeah, nothing particularly spectacular. I've been recording probably 40 minutes now, so I will shut up. Terrible as always, rambly as always, but I will keep them coming. So if you have been listening, as always, I love you. And until I speak to you again, be safe, be well, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.